Joe Rogan Podcast. Asterisk, check it out. The Joe Rogan Experience. Train by day. Joe Rogan Podcast by night. All day. We're live. What's happening, man? Nice to meet you. Hey, it's great to meet you as well, Joe. I really appreciate you taking me out here. Asterisk. Oh, my pleasure. I've enjoyed your content for quite a while now. So, I'd be interested to know when was it that you first started getting interested in what I was doing? What kind of subject? What topic? Wish I remembered because I know you followed me for a couple of years. It was before the Kafra pyramid scans and stuff. Like I'm into the UFO subject and things like that, but I wasn't sure. Well, it's all the silly that I love. I hear you. Silly and serious at the same time. Ancient civilizations, mysteries, and obviously aliens. Oh, yeah. And it's all cotangent. It all connects together. That's I think so. Two dot asterisk. We actually played a clip, but we did a podcast yesterday with a doctor. Michael Masters. Love him. Yeah, I've told him a couple times. Very fun, very smart guy, very interesting guy. But we were talking about that. He has a theory that aliens are human beings in the future. It's very strange theory and based on like kind of the anthropological view and the physiology and how that might have happened over time. And there's also what was the model? There's the many worlds theory and then what was his model? There's a different one that the concept is you could, if you lived in the future, you could go back in time and it would not affect the future because everything that's supposed to happen is already happening and you were supposed to go back anyway. Okay. Interesting. Okay. I try to get my head. But anyway, during that time I asked him about the tridactyl mummies and then we played your clip. Oh, okay. Yeah. We played the clip that showed all the scans. We talked about Jesse Michaels and how we went down to Peru and actually touched those things and was there with them and how surreal it was. Yeah, I was in Peru recently, not to go and see the Nazca mummies. I wish I could have seen them. I was out there to look at all the megalithic studies and the excavations going on at Saxo Woman, which is an incredible megalithic site in Cusco. But the Nazca mummies. I mean, what's interesting about it is that obviously you're going to have a big knee-jerk reaction to something that's so incredibly profound as the idea of these being non-human intelligences that are mummified. But when you actually look at the CT scans and the X-rays, you start to realize that this can't be faked. You can't fake bone cartilage. You can't fake capillaries and heart valves in a fetus inside the body. So, it's so nuts, dude. It's crazy. Some of them have eggs inside them. Some of them have fetuses. Like, it looks like the eggs are big like inside them. And these are small beings. These ones are meant to be like the little kind of like 60 cm beings with like 3 eggs inside them. Then you got the big one, Montserrat, which has an actual fetus like a baby not in an egg. So, it's like, if these are all real, it does feel like there was some sort of genetic experimentation going on where they're just churning out prototypes of some form of Dodestris testers. Do you think that's it? Or do you think that there used to be another type of, for lack of a better word, primate? Well, the thing is that a primate? I mean, what is that? I mean, some of them they're leaning more towards like reptilian anthropod kind of lineage. So, like the bigger ones seem to be more mammalian, whereas the smaller ones with the eggs are sharing reptilian traits. So, it's like there are all these different variations with these different bodies, different kind of like physiological characteristics, which is why it's like, okay, well, is this one lineage or is this just someone kind of like tweaking? Alright, well, that one failed. That one's not working. This one grew wings or I that one off. Like, it's just weird Dalstrus. So your thought is that these are the products of experiments. I mean, if you look at Jesse, when Jesse Michaels did his documentary, one thing he mentioned, I can't remember where he got this from, but he was saying that the original translation of the area of NASA from the original language is like the area of experiment in genetic cloning, where it was like a really strange definition for the actual area that kind of says experimentation and genetic modification. And I can't remember the exact quote, but this was something that he brought up in the documentary. I was like, how? Okay. Then you have all of these various different examples. Risk. Can you? I ask you, yeah. Who said that? Who called it that? So Jesse, when Jesse Michaels put out his documentary, there was just a scene in it. Now my memory is failing me a little bit, but there's a scene in here where he was talking about the NASA region, and he said that in the original language, this translates roughly to the area of experimentation and genetics of some form of Dadastrus. But how do they know what those terms were? I agree. I agree. But it's just a weird little caveat that he brought up in the documentary. I'm not quite. He'd probably be rolling his eyes at me now like, dude, I actually know exactly what this is. Like making you look like an idiot. Yeah, I'm butchering it, asterisk asterisk. But I do that all the time. Asterisk asterisk, oh, for sure. But just the fact that these things exist and they exist in an area of the world which is full of mystery. I mean the megalithic sites around there. Like I said, that's what I was out there for. To see these different megalithic sites in the Nazca Lines and Saxo Woman and in the Sacred Valley. You just have like incredibly complex architecture. Rose quartz, granite, diorite, andesite, these incredibly hard stones like in Egypt. But honestly, I find Peru even more baffling than Egypt with the architecture because of just the level of interlocking precision that you see and the fact that it looks like they've softened the stone in Sax Woman. It looks like marshmallows, like all squished together, and it just invokes a lot of different theories from people about how they were actually manipulating the stone. Asterisk asterisk. Yeah, because it doesn't seem like it was just carved. Asterisk asterisk no. Right. Like it does seem like there's some areas where chunks have been removed from, the quarries, but when they're all pieced together, when you see those weird like curvatures to it, it's like, what were you guys doing? And perfect precision. Perfect precision. And like sometimes you'll see like these corners where just a tiny bit of stone is jutting up and then the other two are connecting into it. It's like this is such a ridiculous level of complexity for an apparent 600-year-ago Bronze Age civilization with bronze chisels and stone hammer tools. And also in Peru is what I find very interesting is you've got a brilliant visual contrast to use when you look at what is the Inca work, which is the rough cut stone, the mortar brick using walls. Like this is all present in Peru next to the megalithic sites, and the mainstream will attribute all of this to the Inca of 600 years ago. But you'll see that the stone walls that are rough cut and use cement and mortar, they're still standing. They're pretty pristine. They're looking good next to megalithic multi-ton slabs of granite that are broken to pieces and strewn across the hillside. So, it just looks like there was a lot of desolation, potentially geological trauma in this area, and then these people, the Inca, discovered these sites, built around them. You can see in like the cracks and corners of all these megaliths that there's like stone walls that they've tried to kind of, reinforce. It's very visually obvious actually when you go out to these places. Isn't it fascinating that people aren't willing to consider the possibility that this is from an older time like that? Asterisk gets heresy. It's just such an knee-jerk reaction, man. Like I think at the end of the day, we're still using models from like 1800 explorers, right? And it's like what the? Like we've moved forward. There's a lot of contradicting evidence and data in a lot of these countries, whether it be Göbekli Tepe in Turkey with the potential infrastructure below the Giza Plateau and then the incredible megaliths in Saxa in Peru like Sax Woman. It just feels like what we're doing is rehashing the same status quo orthodoxy and it's coming up against an ever-piling higher mountain of evidence. Asterisk. And one of the cool things that I got to do out in Peru is to this actual women of the current archaeological digs going on at the Venetian Connor project, which is an archaeological team out there, and they're doing this, and they've actually discovered like 10 meters down into the ground precision curved blocks of stone. They were coming into the earth, and this is in this region, cusp of the Indian legends. There was a vast labyrinth below ground connecting Cusco to Sax woman, connecting Sax woman to Sacred Valley, still spreading out across the Indian mountain range, and this is like an old legend. This is what the shamans and the sacred keepers of knowledge would say in Peru. We're finding evidence for it. We're literally going underground now and seeing that there are actually really precise elements of infrastructure below Saxo Woman, and they're just beginning to uncover this. I was one of the first to go down there and actually see these blocks myself, and it's just like, this is happening now. We're actually getting to a place where we can start to validate some of these forgotten myths and folklores, or if you want to call them conspiracies or pseudoscience from the archaeological side of things, it's being evidenced now. That's mad. So these tunnels and chambers. Like what is exactly the structure that's supposed to be down there and what have they discovered? Asterisk so. It's supposed to be called the Chincana, like the labyrinth, and there's a few different Chincana entrances around the range. Asterisk. How big is it supposed to be? Asterisk vast, multiple kilometers. It's stretching from down Sacswoman down into Cusco and then off into the Andean mountain range to the Sacred Valley. It's very similar to some of the stuff that they found in Egypt. Asterisk. That's bananas. Yes. And then what's interesting is you have the same hallmarks and signatures that you see in Egypt. So, you see the stone knobs, these little protrusions that you get. I'm addicted to those, man, because they're all over the world. Do you have any theories? I mean, I've listened to a lot of theories. I certainly think that we should show an image of it for people that don't know what we're talking about. Stone. There's all of these incredible massive stones that have been somehow or another moved from a quarry sometimes that were hundreds of miles away. They all have these weird nubs on them and no one knows what they are. And there's a bunch of theories like maybe they help them move these things. You see them all over the place and no one quite knows what those are. India, you see them in Egypt, you see them in Peru. This is an Ollantay Tambo in the Sacred Valley. Asterisk missing. This is one of the things that's so infuriating about people that are arrogant about gatekeeping information and being the only ones that are allowed to distribute the truth. Air quotes. We're missing so much. There's no way you really know. Huge gaps of knowledge. We're missing so much. And more time goes on, as Graham Hancock always says, just keeps getting older. And now they just pushed back the use of fire by 310 plus years. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Like it just keeps going. It's not going forward, it's going backwards. And anatomically modern humans, I think, have gone much further back now in time. They're looking at 800,000 years. And so, plus possibly even a million. This is what weirds me out about these creatures. Like human beings have gotten to the point multiple times where we were almost extinct. Of the Toba volcano. I think we got down to God was at 7,000 people. Is that like the low estimate? Damn. Really? Yeah. Yeah. It's a crazy story. Like supervolcanoes are unbelievably devastating to just all life, because it just changes the temperature of the Earth, the entire surface, whatever doesn't get blasted out of the ground by the actual volcano itself. All the other stuff on the other side of the world gets. Like it just ruins everything. We got down to like a few thousand people. Asterisk. And then there was another time where one of these guys came. God, I forgot who that was as well. We were talking about the reality of glaciation, right? And about what happens during ice ages and how devastating it can be. And they were saying that we had gotten at least multiple times in the history of the Earth to the point where it was incapable of sustaining life. Wow. That within a few, like whatever parts per million of carbon dioxide are necessary to support plant life. We literally got to the part where there was almost impossible to support life, and then it rebounded, and everything's fine. So, there's so much we don't know. This is so crazy to try to pretend, that people 600 years ago made this because we know people 600 years ago lived there. We have a lot of archaeological evidence. But you have weird structures on top of obviously much more intricate and complex structures. Yeah. And again, they share the same signatures as places like in Egypt. And they think you're a kook. Yeah, they do. And it's just a knee-jerk reaction. It's adherence to status quo, and you get channeled through a very kind of fine wall in academia, and I think that it can be a real detriment actually to opening up radius and being a little bit more expansive of what could be possible because you do get put into a very restrictive format and in the traditional academic sense. And obviously you have, the pressures of funding and things like this, and you're not going to get the funding if you're talking about this crazy. And it's just like a self-fulfilling censoring, but with the rise of alternative media, we're changing the game a bit because you can actually put a voice out there. You can put an idea out there. It's not completely stonewalled by the academic circle. They can't actually prevent people from discussing these ideas in an open media format like this, right? And if you put a video like you did on X or on YouTube, people can like the video that you did on the aliens, whatever they are, people can see the CT scans. You see the CT scans and you automatically go, wait a minute, this is 12,200 years old. Yeah. You're telling me someone faked this 1,200 years ago? Like, I don't think they could fake that now. You don't. I don't think they could. Hollywood special effects guys, but then the composition of the bones and everything like cartilage and muscle tissue, and how would you fake that? Cup. Circling back, I texted Jesse to ask him for some insight on what he asked for. So, what he sent me was a screenshot of a book where he got it from. I head to translation. Translation here shows science of insemination. Yeah. Jumano, I guess, is the local word. Local word for what that area is called. Right. 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 And this is a book he found from that area, I think. And that says, yeah. Laboratory of Insemination and Cloning. What asterisk? That's what I'm saying. Asterisk, look at all these terms they use. Yuma is semen. Yume. It will verb to inseminate. Umage the science of insemination. Umage Y is inseminator. Yuma scion or clone. This is what I'm saying, bro. Jum to clone. Jumage the science of cloning. And Jupage Y is cloner. So basically what the man? It's there. It's interesting and then obviously go back to that please again. You get alongside this kind of description, you have these bodies, you have this architecture. Yeah, like this was like one little 10-second clip in his documentary, and it just made me perk up like, wait a minute, but the name of the place is like a laboratory of insemination and cloning, and you're getting a smorgasbord of different beings coming out of this area, right? Asterisk, asterisk. What does Jesse add? I think he's speculating somewhat on the etymology. Not definitive, but asterisk, asterisk, right. 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 But yeah, I mean, it's there. That's why Jesse's better at this than me. I'm like, it's clear, it's done. It's their dot asterisk, asterisk. Wow. It is interesting. Asterisk, asterisk, yeah, it is interesting. And I think it does, leads into what was happening on this planet a long time ago, dot asterisk, asterisk. It does. And it leads to like, my point was when I was getting to the whole super volcano thing, what if something happened that wiped that species out? Right? Like clearly there's no more Neanderthals, right? Wait. They whatever happened, whether it was us or disease or whatever killed them off, they don't exist anymore. We only have evidence that people interbred with them. What? What is that thing? Is that thing maybe one of us? Like another kind of human? Like look, another kind of primate, you know? Look how different we are than rhesus monkeys, right? Like we're all primates. We're so different. Why would we assume that the ones that we found so far, including like what did they find? Denisovans like 15 years ago or something like that, right? Right. And then Homo naledi, what was that one that was just a few years ago? Like they keep finding these new versions of people. Not new, obviously, but long extinct versions of people. I think it's possible. And I also think that there's a potential. What if a particular subrace species of hominid decided to opt in for subterranean living and they escaped a lot of the surface world traumas and were actually able to kind of maintain their society? I mean, look at all of the weird evidence we have for these vast underground. Darren C. would love to go there. My god, what just released a video on it? It's bananas. Could you imagine renovating your house and finding that? Renovating your house and finding there's a room for 20,000 people under your house. Asterisk, asterisk. Would you say anything? Asterisk, asterisk, I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to think about where I live. Depends on where I live. You live in a place where the government could just come and take your house. Yeah. I'd be worried about that. I would say it if I was in America, but even I was in America. What if I really like my house and now my house is connected to heritage, right? And what the archaeologists want to come? Like, get out of my yard, asterisk, asterisk. Exactly. Exactly. But like, yeah, I think about this and I think about all of these different. Good. No, I'm happy to hear that. Happy to hear that. But it's interesting. And then you have, the strange stories like from the Hopi tribe about the Ant people that came during a time of cataclysm and they brought them underground and then they brought them back up. And there's a few like that. There was a really interesting podcast. It was years ago. I remember seeing this where they'd brought these two Amazonian shamans on the podcast like full headdress. They spoke their own tribal language. They needed an interpreter in the room, and the guy asked them what they thought about aliens, and they didn't understand the question. Didn't know what he meant by alien. He was like thumbing through this book, and he put up a picture of a gray, and the tribesman went, "Oh, that's Makwabu. That's Makwabu." And they had a whole story about how this was a human that became an ant that lives underground, and it can appear in the divine light. But you should be very careful with this being because it will take your soul underground, and you need a very good shaman to bring your soul back. And they were taking it real seriously. Like, yeah, dot asterisk asterisk. Asterisk asterisk, yeah, dude. So, it's like these tribal cultures. They know, man. They know dot asterisk asterisk. Well, I think they have. I think there's an ancient memory in people. I think it's one of the reasons why these post-apocalypse movies are so popular. There's a lot. There's a lot of post-apocalypse movies where, like people, they figure out how to make houses out of wood again, and they're surviving, and they make little encampments, and they fight off the intruders from the outside. Real like a Walking Dead type with no zombies. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a memory in us of the surviving humans. I think there's a memory, and I think we probably have been through some terrible moments in the Earth's history where there was an enormous disaster and we were the ancestors of the survivors, and I don't think there was a lot of survivors. Asterisk, asterisk, no. In fact, I heard you talking about that the other day where you were saying about like the, and it's something I agree with. The necessity for post-cataclysm, post-apocalypse, the strong men would inherit the Earth. Monsters would inherit the Earth, right? And so if we really were a hybrid advanced Atlantean type civilization prior to this, maybe even more matriarchal than patriarchal, it would make sense that when things fall apart, obviously, and now you need to survive in the wild, the strong men and the, savage guys would inherit the earth because they would be the ones who would be able to, push through the type of environment. And then if that is the case and you fast forward to where we are now, look at our incredibly competitive, hyper kind of aggressive culture that we have. It would make sense that this was formed through the seeds of trauma and through the seeds of having to fight for survival and recovering what was lost. Asterisk asterisk. Yes. Which also makes sense why the past. The further you go back, the more barbaric these people are you're dealing. And you're like, well, it took a while for people to learn, maybe. But maybe you're dealing with people that had to. They probably had to cannibalize. I mean, they probably had to eat everything they could. There was only a few thousand of them left. If we really got hit by asteroids, like if the Younger Dryas is correct, it makes sense that it would take like 5,000 years for civilization to emerge again because that seems to be what happened. It seems to be like you have literally the scrappy survivors and then eventually the Earth gets back to normal. But even then, it takes thousands of years for people to just have a semblance of what we're experiencing today in terms of civilization. Asterisk, and that's why prehistory is so fascinating and the Neolithic and the Stone Age, because okay, so this is a time when we were just basic hunter-gatherers. We had no, intelligence, no language, no real understanding of the world according to the mainstream. But this is where you have multi-ton, geodetically aligned solar equinox and, what's the lunar alignment? I've completely just blanked just because I'm a little bit nervous of being on here, but like, like equinox alignments and then like alignments to the sun and the moon, mathematically, geodetically aligned to what look like telluric currents like electromagnetic flows beneath the ground. A lot of these Stonehenge's endowments are placed on places where you have strong electromagnetic concentrations and just the package of mathematics and engineering and stone crafting and the knowledge of the sun and the stars and your placement on the planet to create things like, Stonehenge and these other areas in the world. How can you do that if you're just hunter-gatherers coming out of, animalistic behavior? It doesn't make any sense. And then we kind of regress as we go further into history and the stonework becomes less impressive. The things become less accurate. And I find that very interesting. How is it at the beginnings of our history some of the most impressive structures exist asterisk? Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Asterisk, no. And just Egypt alone with the conventional timeline of 2500 BC for the Great Pyramid doesn't make any sense. No, it doesn't. I think that they most likely settled around those pyramids. Most likely settled around them and then the scans. If these can be validated fully and empirically with digs and confirmation physically, then that changes everything. It changes everything and you're seeing a lot of people spaz out online. Asterisk. Oh yeah, it's wonderful to watch. It's been wonderful to watch because when people are under pressure, the real character gets revealed and they're under a lot of pressure right now because those scans. That radio tomography or whatever it is, synthetic aperture radar. Yeah. It's super accurate with stuff that we know exists. Yes, that's what's a real problem for these people. You want to believe it exists when it can map out all these chambers in the pyramid. You want to believe it exists when it can map out things that we know that exist 50 FT underground. You want to map you're cool with that. Yeah. Yeah. But 1 kilometer of subterranean. Oh no. No. Also multiple scans from multiple. Over 200. Yes. It's all the same message. They're getting the same message. There's pillars. Enormous pillars. They have coils around them. Asterisk. What? Pillars with coils. Asterisk, all of them have coils. And the whole structure is like almost 2 kilometers deep into the earth. It's obscene. It's obscene. Like literally as well, like 2 km of infrastructure. It's like the whole underground. Like people with copper tools. Help me out. And that was my frustration when it first came out because when it came out, obviously I did some like research into the people involved in the Giza pyramid team. I found Filippo Biondi. I found his harmonic SAR website where it is listed the things like the Mosul Dam in Iraq and the Grand Sasso Laboratory in Italy, places that they had actually done scans prior to even the Great Pyramid, which was peer-reviewed. Their 2020 scan of the Great Pyramid was a peer-reviewed paper. And then you fast forward to now where they've got these ones and you have people like, Flint Dibble and Piers Morgan going, it's pseudoscience. It's never been done before. It's never been tested. It's like, it has been done. It has been tested. It's actually got a patent. It's been peer-reviewed in a paper. Military applications, military applications. And Filippo Biondi, he works for the Italian government. Like he's not some idiot. He's a very, very intelligent man. And he can speak on the science of this like, articulately. So he works on top secret projects with the Italian military. I don't know if you caught like that little scene in Jesse. He's like, he didn't even say a word, man. Like, could you not talk about that? He just looks at him like, okay, we'll just figure that out. Like that. That's when you know, man. That's when you know. But I mean, whatever this is, everyone should be fascinated. You shouldn't be dismissing this if that's not even your field of expertise. It just shows what kind of a weirdo you are. Like what you should be doing is going, okay, how many scans do you have? Yeah, you have 200 scans of this. Show me more. Show me more. Tell me what's going on. We should probably figure out what that is. Asterisk asterisk. Imagine if the pyramids didn't exist. Or imagine if it's like, the Sphinx at one point in time was mostly covered with sand. Let's just imagine some crazy scenario where the entire pyramid structure is covered in sand, and nobody knows it exists, and then someone comes along and does a scan of the ground and says you're not going to believe this, but there's some under there. Now what if everybody goes, that's ridiculous, that's preposterous, and they don't look and they don't look? We never find the thing that we all agree exists because you can go there, you can visit, right? It's there, right? If that didn't exist, you'd never believe in a million years there's a structure with 2,300,000 stones that's perfectly aligned true north, south, east, and west. And you're dating it to somewhere around 4,000. I mean, that sounds like some pseudoscience conspiracy talk to me, Joe. Sounds like kookiness. Why is it more kooky to say these people not only were this advanced, they were even more advanced? Asterisk asterisk way more. They were down into the ground 2 km. It might have been a power station. Well, Filippo thinks that. He seems to think that the spirals might have actually been tied to hydrology and using mechanical stress and the piezoelectric materials used in the Great Pyramid and the plateau itself, because what you have is a very interesting coupling between a limestone and rose granite. So limestone is a very good amplifier of acoustics, and rose granite becomes piezoelectric under mechanical stress, and acoustics are a form of mechanical stress. So there's like a certainly something to be said about the fact that the pyramids are acoustically tuned, like they're incredible inside the acoustics, and they've done lots of measurements and experiments on validating that it almost seems to go up in a perfect scale up to the king's chamber. And then the king's chamber itself, I believe, is focused around 110 to 115 hertz, which is interesting for neurological reasons in terms of influencing the brain. But on top of that, you have again this incredible coupling between limestone and rose quartz granite, where under the right conditions, you absolutely could get energetic responses from that. But as well as this, you have the hydrological knowledge, which is really quite impressive. And when you look at places like the Assyrian in Abydos, which is a kind of sunken down temple, we call everything a temple or a sacred site, but we really don't know, do we? It could be functional sites. Could be a power plant of some form, like you said. And the Assyrian and Abydos next to it, you have the Seti temple, which is incredible. It's beautiful and full of calligraphy and hieroglyphics. And then you have this bare faceless megalithic place called the Assyrian, which has sunken down into the ground, perpetually filled with water. So they've tried to pump it out and it just fills back up again because it's connected down into the water table. And there's all these different shafts and hydrological components in this site that they don't understand the full function of. And then you look at places like the Great Pyramid, where you go down to the bottom of the Great Pyramid. You have like the kind of core in this whole area looks like it's been water eroded, as if it was flooded out repeatedly, and you use some sort of like a pump or some sort of sequencing area where you push water in and then let it out, push water in and let it out. And so Filippo thinks that maybe these spirals bringing water up, and if you're 1,000 meters down, you're tapping into like ancient aquifers. So you could be drawing up a really impressive amount of like ancient water. And I just wonder if same with Peru, there's something incredibly important about accessing this kind of water at the real depths of the earth. And they seem to have a real interest in doing that. So perhaps the pyramids are in some way. Like, I mean, if these spirals are real, it's like a plug, isn't it? It's like plugged into the earth, connected down into these aquifers. Perhaps it was utilizing water as an energetic medium through the materials data stress. I would recommend to anybody to check out Christopher Dunn's work. Astroskestris, oh, fantastic data stress. I had him on the podcast and he explained to us his theory. He's an engineer. Astroskestris, yeah, data stress. And he started studying the structure of the pyramid, and his conclusion was the entire thing was probably used to generate energy. And it's like, what? But when he breaks it down in terms of, I'll butcher the math if I even try, but in terms of the dimensions, the way it's made, and the fact that you could have something that was down in the basement that was somehow or another creating a resonance, right? Right. Right. That would have this effect, the shafts that go out straight out into space, and the fact that there's evidence that they would possibly use these shafts to pour chemicals in and it would create gases and asterisk, well, this is pretty nuts, asterisk. It is nuts. But when I was not the last time I was out in Egypt, but the time before then, I was out there with a guy called Jeffrey Drum. He's got a YouTube channel called The Land of Chem. And he's all about this in terms of the chemical mass manufacturing that he believes was going on in the pyramids and these other areas. And we filmed all of the coverage of that if anyone wants to go and see it on my YouTube channel. I'm taking us through areas in the Giza Plateau where you have an incredible concentration on the Giza Plateau of iron veins, and they all seem to be emanating from the pyramids. So if you go around the pyramids, you'll see these iron vein networks that are flowing out from the central point, and these iron veins are heading down into what are called these boat pits. When you say iron veins, so like iron ore? Iron ore. Asterisk, it's not on the surface, it's deep in the ground. Well, I mean, there's some on the surface, so you can actually see the snaking kind of veins of iron that's kind of rusted out and oxidized, and you can make it out. But surely it must be deeper as well. But it seems to be stretching out from the pyramids down into the east. I don't know, but his theory is that they built the pyramids on top of these iron veins, particularly because this place was getting lightning strikes frequently and they were using asterisk. Yeah, I know. I know. I know. It's a giant lightning rod, dude. I mean, these things are built in a way, and they were gold capped at one point. Like high-end gold is a really good conductor of electricity, and the Giza Plateau is covered in these conductive iron vein networks which the pyramids do seem to be built upon. Now, this is, his personal theory, but he's an American who's been living out in Cairo now for about 6 or 7 years, I believe. He's been. He just decided to up and move out there and dedicate his life to exploring these places. And so he took us across, all of these amazing areas and then showed us things I'd never seen before in Egypt. But his theory on the pyramids is similar to Christopher Dunn in terms of some form of chemical manufacturing taking place. And if you know him, the original name for Egypt was Kemet. That's the beginning of chemistry and alchemy. So this is where one of the root words where we then got chemistry and alchemy from. So, it is the land of chemistry and alchemy. And that's bananas. There you go, Asterisk. Is this up from his video? Go, this is one of his videos. Great. This is the iron ore. So, these are the. Yeah, I believe he's probably highlighting the iron veins, and these iron veins head out into what are called boat pits, which they believed in the mainstream interpretation. You're freaking me out with the land of Chem. That is crazy. But when did they name that? I don't know when it was named that, but it was originally referenced as Kemet in some of the ancient Greek. And there's reference to it being called Kemet, and it really means the same thing. It's what people believe is the continuation of alchemy and chemistry because you get so much alchemy from Egypt, and obviously this is the place where you get Hermes Trismegistus and Hermeticism and the Philosopher's Stone kind of leaks out from these types of areas. So I think that there is a lot to suggest this. Plus, we actually know in the mainstream that they were incredible chemists, like regardless of, exotic.